tonight's program. Looks like Catalin just hit the record button. Thank you. Well, thank you all very much for coming to tonight's Introduction to Stargazing webinar with Friends of the Owyhee. I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen. There we are. Okay. Yes. Thank you for joining us, Friends of the Owyhee. And we're just always doing all kinds of things out there in the Owyhee. Anything naturalist related, it seems we get into these endeavors. And over this year, we've had a whole variety of webinars from the very first of the month talking about bighorn sheep populations here in the Owyhee. And then, of course, these stargazing webinars that we've interspersed throughout. And as I'll say at the end of tonight's program, that next month, we also have a really stellar presenter lined up, Renee Patrick, to talk about the Oregon Natural Desert Association's sponsored Oregon Desert Trail and some adventures on there. But for tonight's material, it also is in partnership with a few community libraries in the area, the McDermott Library, the Harney County Library, the Vail Library, and the Ontario Community Library. And I have heard that they do use the YouTube videos sometimes when talking to their patrons about stargazing in these programs. So that's always nice to hear. And then also, it's really important to acknowledge that this work that Friends of the Owyhee is doing is largely on behalf of this major endeavor in southeastern Oregon with the Oregon Outback Dark Sky Network. And I'll give you a little more information about that as we go. Okay, before I go any further, it's my pleasure to always remind us that we are here living in Turtle Island together on stolen land, on land where the ancestral people, and here that's the Northern Paiute and Shoshone-Bannock tribes, that were forcibly removed from their homes in acts of violence and atrocities. It's very sad to think of those times and the trials that those people went through. But no matter what, those people survive and their culture survives and thrives. And it's just amazing to see all of the invigoration in sort of the support that Indigenous peoples are receiving in this modern day. I think just as a tribute to that, another amazing thing that's happened quite recently that maybe you saw in our recent newsletter, that buttes or mountains, plains, all these geographic features that previously had a derogatory name in reference to the land's first people, all of those names have been formally removed and formally replaced with the native tongue, with the native language of that region. So, for instance, a local butte was renamed with its Paiute name, its Northern Paiute name. And Catalin has also been trying to gather material to help us speak that name. But the direct translation of that, there's two parts of it. One of those refers to a grassy mountain, and the other refers to a a sitting still mountain. So I'm just enthusiastic about having the real names of the real features spread around this Turtle Island. So the next thing that I'd like to acknowledge is, the heavens above in this stargazing more than an introduction. We've gone through this quite a few times, and many of you I know personally are more advanced stargazers by this point. But these images from the James Webb Telescope are just mind-blowing, and they're of course not something we can see with our own two eyes. This is from an amazing, powerful telescope that of course was was launched a little over a year ago, but also started collecting, or a little under a year ago, and also has started collecting this amazing data, these pictures. And this was one of the more recent pictures that I fell in love with. That this is an image of a protostar. Yeah, a protostar. So you can imagine our sun. It's a fully igniting, nuclear synthesizing, helium manufacturing star. But it also, before it had enough mass to undergo stellar nucleosynthesis, it was considered a protostar. And at that very beginning of the light that was coming away from the star, or making it then a star, looked something like this. So what we're seeing in this image here, the hourglass shape is really the first thing that I think our mind, or at least my mind, often saw. And I thought that was really confusing. But what's happening here is in the middle of this hourglass shape, where the two are coming together, that's the protostar. That's an area that dust and clouds of dust have been obscuring astronomers' view for quite some time with any other telescopic device. This is also in the Taurus constellation, and they call it the star-forming area. But using this image now can get a much clearer picture of the light that's actually cast away on of this protoplanetary disk that's surrounding this proto-sun. And in two opposite directions, in the directions this light is expelled, it's illuminating the gas and clouds of the surrounding space, interstellar space.
Food is set.
Yep, good.
Right? Just amazing, I think, just amazing. So I hope that you too are also every once in a while scanning the James Webb Telescope images for thrilling, inspirational images like this. Okay, all right. Tonight, here's what's on our docket. I'm going to really quickly go through the preliminary material that is archived on the Friends of the Owyhee YouTube page and previous introduction to stargazing presentations. But the meat of tonight's presentation is really just a tribute, I would say. Partly all of the things that I haven't got out by this point in the 14 or so stargazing presentations. So it's a little bit of a smattering of a few different things. Yeah, we're going to take a look at some things you can see in tonight's sky and 2023's sky. But I also wanted to share stories. I think while it is fun to stargaze and to look at these constellations and to begin to look at them like old friends, now that we are seeing the winter circle come back up after we learned about it for the last 2 years. But also, as humans, we tend to share information via storytelling. And the night sky is full of stories to tell. And so I want to go through a few of those stories, some commonly known, some uncommon, and some that we're actually going to make together. All right, so that's what we're going to do, is talk about annual stories that are written in the stars. For example, like Orion and Scorpio, or Scorpius, and the birth of the sun, or the day star. Both of those have been covered a little bit in the past, but I wanted to expand today. Okay, so in past introductions to that are archived on YouTube, you'll find sort of a lengthy discussion on the clothing and some supplies, some low-cost supplies that can improve your stargazing experience, as well as a process to set for yourself to get sharper at stargazing, right? To really develop those skills, it takes practice, right? Every time, just to practice. So whether that's a couple of nights in a row to go out and refresh your memory to see the same thing, or giving that a week and letting the sky, the stars move a little bit and refresh yourself. But I highly recommend, if you haven't already made this a weekly or a monthly practice, to go out and stargaze at sort of your desired time of day. Some people are morning people. We take the standard of constellations that are called winter constellations, are those that you can see after supper in the winter months. So a lot of people are then evening stargazers because of that. But either way, I really hope that you've taken these lessons and begun to incorporate this into your own personal practice of really having a relationship with the night sky and the cosmos, as we, our people of all of Earth, have done for thousands of years. Okay, so that's actually the next thing that I wanted to remind us of, the importance of the natural night skies. And number one, I'll say it again, that this is a cultural resource for all of us humans all over Earth. And then let's talk about light pollution and solutions just for a moment. And then the citizen science efforts and dark sky measurements again, just for a moment. And I'll give you a little update on the dark sky sanctuary. And then please do be using the Globe at Night app to be an advocate for dark skies. Okay, so as I like to say, this is like a caveman perspective. When we're using our naked eyes, no telescope, no binoculars, just our own eyeballs to look up at the night sky. And this is what humans have been doing for tens of thousands of years, and maybe even hundreds of thousands of years. We just don't quite have those written records like cave drawings that go back that far. But this is a drama that lives in our minds anthropomorphically. We are the ones that are expressing ourselves and our stories onto the tapestry of the night sky. And all cultures all over Earth have repeated this process and done this and created beautiful stories, some of which I want to share tonight. But I would say my number one reason for being a dark sky advocate is exactly this. I feel like this is a global cultural resource that we share all over Earth as Earthlings. Okay, then the New World Atlas of Artificial Sky Brightness map that we like to show. So here's the scale of artificial sky brightness, and then a large initiation of this work to do outreach related to stargazing out here in Malheur County in the Owyhee is look at the size of this dark area out here in eastern Oregon, portion of Washington, large portion of Idaho, and portion of northern Nevada. I mean, this area is about as dark as it gets, folks. And we are currently taking those measurements of how dark. Okay, so light pollution is, of course, the bother here. We would, of course, like to advocate that in the sanctuary that all public land managers and public land buildings be retrofitted with appropriate lighting. I mean, that's what we're really advocating for in the sanctuary, is that the Bureau of Land Management, if they have, say, you know, a barracks building, or they have you know, a building that has lights on it, or say ODOT, Oregon Department of Transportation, a building that has lights, that they be appropriate lighting. That's all that we're really asking for here in the sanctuary, to keep the area as dark as possible. Now, we would also like to do further outreach out into the Treasure Valley, out into Boise, to Meridian, to talk about, you know, setting up some municipal laws potentially that can also encourage folks to use shielded lights to not be shooting that light up into space. Okay, there's that big dark hole again. We're officially on that steering committee of the Oregon Outback Dark Sky Network. And here's the map. All right, this did come out quite a while ago, and we've hinted around at it here and there. But this is in the formal application that went to the International Dark Sky Association on behalf of the Oregon Outback Dark Sky Network. And so we're over here in Malheur County. There's Jordan Valley, just for context. And then here's where I'm based, is in Ontario, or where Friends of the Owyhee is also based. And then many of you are from, you know, all around the region. Now, you'll notice that there's a big chunk of Malheur County here that's not included in the sanctuary, just like areas of Harney County over here. And why? Well, these are the areas that the light bleed and pollution from the Treasure Valley is just too bright to be within the threshold for a dark sky area, let alone a sanctuary. So we're really trying to get away from that Boise light bubble before we start calling this area the official sanctuary. So you'll see that this follows what's called Crowley Road, a really wonderful gravel road for you overlanders out there if you haven't been on it already. Crowley Road down from Harper enters the Owyhee drainage. And then we designated really one point, the crossing here at Dry Creek, I believe, and then following one line of latitude all the way over to the Oregon-Idaho border, down, skirting around the light bubble of Jordan Valley, and then finishing out the rest of the county. So we have gotten official comments back from the International Dark Sky Association that really just says we should be doing a little more outreach, you know, show us that we're trying to limit the advancement of light pollution. Then we'd also like to get more measurements. That's where all you folks come in. So we do have a very vast area that we'd like to better understand exactly how dark it is. Now, we've been using the sky quality meters, you know, when we go out on trips. So there's a couple of locations we have, but we can always use more. Exactly how dark? We have 2 sky quality meters that are available at the Ontario Community Library that are available for checkout. So if you're within our library district, then you can absolutely go there and check those ones out easily. If you fall outside of that area, then here at Friends of the Owyhee, we can still help you get a hold of the dark sky quality meter that we have if you're going out for a trip. So there's no shortage of these things in the area. It's just if you're in the area, let us know. The other really cool instrument that we have now is a continuous sky quality meter that we've installed. So here's from April 16th, 2022, that shows some of the darkness around Oregon. You can see all the stars over here on the map of all of the places that we have. The IDA Oregon chapter has a dark sky meter already, but look at Malheur County. We've got nothing. We're totally dry out here. Well, your friends over here have officially changed that. So down there at Jordan Craters, I can always tell where it's at because that big black lava flow, we are actually getting one of these installed out near Jordan Craters. So very excited to have this continuous data logger that takes measurements of the night sky about every 1 minute is what I have that set for. And this quarter we'll officially get to hand our data over to the International Dark Sky Association, and they'll include it in their first quarter 2023 report. So very exciting. There's what the kit looks like if you're interested in the kit. Seriously, get a hold of me, get a hold of Catalin, get a hold of Tim, go straight to the library. If you're even vaguely thinking about, yeah, I'm going out, that would be fun, then let us know. I mean, we can never have too much use of these things, okay? And then you can also do this with your space phone. So where is my space phone? There's my space phone. Or your smartphone, of course, that there's a couple of different apps that you can use. One of those is Loss of Night and the Dark Sky Meter. But then I highly recommend going to Globe at Night using your browser and then using their simple multi-step process to give them dark sky measurements.
We seem to have froze up.
Yes.
So we're frozen too.
Yeah, it looks like it's Sammy's internet. I'm going to give him a quick call, maybe.
The question for anyone out there is that in the areas where there is no cell phone coverage, will these apps still work?
You're back in, but you're muted, Sammy.
Okay.
There we
Okay.
go.
Back in. Oh, wow.
Awesome.
The internet just went off over there. Okay, but I'm back. So, apologize, folks, but we'll continue through. Let's get to our meat today. So yes, using the globe at night, please do that. In the past, this is all the stuff that's archived in the past. I didn't include the July 13th zodiacal constellations recording. That was out of a dorm in Montana. Wasn't my most shining moment. And then
Sammy, go ahead and share your screen, please.
Oh, yep. Thank you, Catalan. Lose my head.
All good.
Okay, there you are. So last month or September's stargazing presentation was all about the winter triangle. And that wasn't a presentation that I gave. We didn't do one that month, but that would have been all around. We have the concept of the winter circle that we've talked about multiple times. And then also after the winter circle sets by the end of the spring, you know, you're starting to barely see the edge of the circle. Then we have the bright stars that make up the summer triangle come up. So that's Altair, which is the eagle, or the star Altair out of the constellation Aquila, that's the eagle. Vega, the star of the Lyra constellation, and then Deneb, which is the tail of the swan. And Deneb actually comes from an Arabic word that means the tail of the hen. So to find the summer triangle, just for your information for next time, you'd start in the south in the summer and looking up towards the zenith. These stars literally straddle the Milky Way. So if you can see just a little bit of the Milky Way there above Sagittarius, you can find these three bright stars. And both Deneb and Vega will find themselves at the zenith or straight up overhead during the night during the summer. Okay, so that was a little bit about the the summer triangle. Here's the swan and Deneb setting. But I wanted to share with you now some of these other stories. Looks like I cut out a couple of those older slides. So one of the stories I think that is easiest to discuss around the northern hemisphere. So if we shift our attention towards the north and you look for Ursa Major, or the Big Bear, the Big Dipper asterism. Then the other circumboreal constellations that we've talked about that are all present there around the Big Bear or around the Little Bear, Polaris. There's Cassiopeia, there's Cepheus, the king, there's Perseus, and Pegasus, of course, is involved in this story. But we haven't really talked about their story. Now, I get a couple of images up here, and maybe you already know this story, or maybe you've seen the movie. Yes, there's a couple of different movies, Hollywood movies, about these stories. So the queen that's shown here, Cassiopeia, she was apparently a very, very vain person, and was overheard by the sea nymphs telling someone that her and her daughter were the most beautiful people, even more beautiful than the gods. So the sea nymphs took this information directly to Poseidon, the god of the sea, and Poseidon was a little upset by this pompous human touting that information. So Poseidon decided to send a sea monster after the city that Cassiopeia and Cepheus ruled. Now, hearing this information, because of course it got across the ocean and to them, they decided to make a sacrifice to hold off that sea monster. And of course, what better to sacrifice than your daughter? I mean, no, right? But this is how, you know, some of these stories go. And Andromeda, the daughter of Cassiopeia, was set out on a rock in this picture, chained to the rock as a sacrifice to the sea monster, Cetus. So upon the sea monster's arrival, just by chance, the newest and most amazing Greek hero at the time happened to be flying by on his winged horse, Pegasus. Okay, so where did this guy come from? We should go back a little bit. Perseus was sort of a jaded young man that had some of this demigod blood, had a parent that was a god, and, you know, didn't really know that for most of his life. So he always had something to prove. And when his mother was captured by another evil king, you know, a couple kingdoms over from Cassiopeia, he really felt like he had something to prove. And of course, the king was like, hey, if this guy's got something to prove, I'll put him to work. So he sent him out to slay the Gorgons. The Gorgons are these three controllers of fate, the futures of fate. But also the fourth Gorgon is Medusa, this famed monster who has serpents for hair. And when you look at this particular Gorgon in the eye, you would turn to stone. So of course she's, you know, really scary, right? And of course, doing away with her and doing away with the other Gorgons, the Gorgons of fate, would give that king the ability to transcend fate. I don't really know what he was thinking. So Perseus then, being the hero that he is, he was supported by the centaur Chiron. Chiron is actually a centaur that trained Hercules. You see Hercules up there at the beginning of my slide, to remember to mention him, as well as Achilles. So all of these really amazing Greek heroes had some training by this centaur Chiron in the past. So Perseus gets a hold of Apollo's winged shoes and his hat and this cool shield and sword, and he goes out to slay the Gorgons, which of course he does because he's a Greek hero and he's awesome. It's part of the story. And as he cuts off Medusa's head, and this is one of the stories, out comes the winged horse Pegasus that was just hiding in the Gorgon apparently. But out comes Pegasus, the winged horse, and now Perseus has a way home, so he jumps on the winged horse and he flies with the head of the Gorgon that he stuffed into a gunny sack so she couldn't turn everything to stone. Okay, so now let's pick up on Andromeda. You know, Pegasus and Perseus are flying over. They look down, and Perseus sees beautiful Andromeda chained to a rock and is like, hey, this situation ain't right. I better interfere. You know, what a good Samaritan. So he goes down to check these things out. And sure enough, here comes Cetus, the sea monster. He saves the girl on the flying horse. And then he takes the head of Medusa to her parents, you know, the vain parent Cassiopeia that started this whole mess, and then the king Cepheus, who's apparently just sitting by, and used the head to turn them to stone. All right, and then apparently Andromeda and Perseus live happily ever after. I mean, don't look into too much of the rest of that because it's not happy. Now, okay, so this is a myth. This is it's a story, clearly, but the story, here's the point, is the story is actually written in the stars. Not exactly. There's a lot of anthropomorphism, but this story actually helps me when I'm doing any stargazing, and I'm even just trying to orient myself to where I'm at in the sky, that knowing this story and this relationship does help me keep in order some of those constellations, even if I can't quite see them right away. So Pegasus is known as the box or the square. If you're looking for Pegasus over the month of December while you're using the Globe at Night app, you would find that by first looking to the south and then finding Jupiter, which is really, really bright in the southern night sky right now, and then working up a little bit higher to about 60 degrees off of the horizon towards the zenith, and you'll find the square, you'll find the box that makes up Pegasus. Okay, and then if you move from Pegasus towards Cassiopeia, which is also then towards Polaris, you go through a series of constellations. You go through Andromeda and Perseus, and then finally Cassiopeia. So there they all are. All the players of this story are all found right in one place in the night sky. And I just really admire that. So of course, this is an example of how, you know, it's like the cart before the horse. Of course, the story doesn't make the stars, as we know in our Western way of thinking, scientific way of thinking today, right? That the stars are totally unrelated to this story, but in a charismatic human way, the story can help us with our stargazing, can help us remember these things from time to time. Okay, so if you're looking for Cassiopeia, starting from Polaris, if you know how to find Polaris from the Big Dipper, you'd go through Polaris over to the M or the W shape of Cassiopeia. There's the star Calf. And then you can find that square of Pegasus. That's the body of Pegasus. And then right above Pegasus, you'll start finding the constellations Andromeda and Perseus. I like to use Pleiades or the Seven Sisters as a little marker too. It really marks, it almost marks the lower foot, the lower right foot of Perseus, as if he's standing on Pleiades. Okay. Let me go forward through the rest of these here that I kind of plan to address, but I'd like to move forward to the next story. So I had mentioned the centaur Chiron, and Chiron is actually up in the night sky also. It's not Sagittarius, another centaur, but Chiron was the trainer of a lot of these Greek heroes, and of course, in these Greek myths, was also honored by finding a permanent residence up in the night sky. Okay, so there's some of the training of those Greek heroes: Ajax, Jason, Theseus, Achilles, and Hercules. All right, so there we get to talk about Hercules. The story of Hercules, you know, there's some more famed parts of it than others. And of course, this is a legend and is a myth, so it has changed through the eons of time, both from its written form and its Disney form, which, if you're like me, I tend to think of the Hercules on the left. That's the Hercules I think of. But of course, there was another movie, probably about 15 years ago by now, that The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, played Hercules. Also a very good movie, well cast and things like that. But talks about some of the darker sides of Hercules, which are not necessarily written in the stars. So we're just going to stick to the parts that are written in the stars. If you know much about Hercules, then Heracles, I think is another way to pronunciate that. The 7 labors that Hercules went through, which include this fight here with the Nemean lion, which is then the skin that he wears on his back, the Erymanthian boar, the Cretan bull, and also slaying the Hydra are just a couple that have been recapitulated through time and also play a role in the movie. So I wanted to discuss the last of those. So here's Hercules up in the night sky. You can actually see Hercules right about now as it gets dark, going down on the eastern horizon, a little bit between the north and, the east and the west and the north. And Hercules looks a lot like some of the other figures that are attributed to being male in Greek mythology. So just like Orion, you'll see the sort of narrow waist and a sort of a belt-like thing. And then you have the wider shoulders and the wider knees that are often made up or often attributed to being male in the Greek mythology. So here's Hercules with his wide set knees or thighs here, the sort of narrower abdominal area, and then these wider shoulders. And here in the night sky, the top 2 are the shoulders of Hercules, but then these outboard stars, multiple stars here, are meant to be the heads of the multi-headed Hydra. So the Hydra is a mythical animal that's sort of dragon-like, but it also has a head that, if cut, that head sprouts 3 more. So a very dangerous creature that, if you are like Hercules, practiced in sword form, and your natural instinct is to cut the head off of the thing, then you've created 3 more problems where only 1 existed before. So Hercules, in this instance of slaying the Hydra, the way that he was able to overcome this was by the aid of Chiron, that gave him the information to take the head of the Hydra and to bury it in the sand. And then it was all cured and it was all over after. That's all he had to do. Instead of just letting the dead heads just lay around, if you simply bury it back in the soil, giving this mythical creature back to the earth goddess Gaia, then no more Hydra. It was as simple as that. So that Hydra then, as it sat underneath the surface, apparently in the mythology, then changed or metamorphosed into a scorpion, the great scorpion that laid there. So that scorpion really is of the Hydra from the Hercules constellation. And of course, that scorpion is the Scorpius constellation. That is one of the 13 zodiacal constellations. So now to another hero in the sky, to well, sort of hero, Orion. I put a little bit of Wikipedia in here to acknowledge that a lot of these stories that the Greeks were telling are a lot the same as are the same as the stories that we tell today. And this is sort of famously known as the 7 basic plots of why we tell stories. Oftentimes there's stories of overcoming the monster. The Hydra, just did that one. Overcoming the barriers, overcoming your fears, overcoming things. Then there's the rags to riches stories, right? We always love these ones, you know, where just as simple as someone winning the lottery like that. How apparently that does happen, like the 2 billion thing that just happened. But that's a common story that we tell ourselves in humanity to kind of like keep us going, you know, to keep these things up. And then there's the quest, right? You know, the young person that is going out on the road to follow their quest, to follow their path through this life. Okay, another common story. And then the voyage and the return, or something like the prodigal son returns, right? Is often this is related to the quest where the person has gone out, they've gone out, but then gloriously they return to us with new information or new insights or new inventions or whatever it is. And then like John Delar coming back to the cave with all those cool inventions that him and Ayla came up with. And then the comedy, the tragedy, and the rebirth. All three of those are told in multiple different fashions. And the rebirth, or coming out of the quest, or of the overcoming the monster on the other side into a new era of life, perhaps. Okay, and so the reason I bring this up is clearly a lot of the Greek stories of the night sky are related to these same stories. Then Orion here, that's pictured with Orion's belt, the lower left foot, Rigel, and then the upper right shoulder, Betelgeuse. Those are some of the classical markers to help us find the winter circle. So you're probably already very familiar with Orion. And if you've been staying up late at night lately, if you wait till about 10:30, 11 o'clock, you'll start to see Orion come up over the horizon down there in the southeast. Now, Orion has his own set of stories, and this goes back to Gaia, the earth goddess, who is the mother of all beasts. Yes, even the Hydra that went out to slay, or well, not to slay, that went out, that Hercules actually went to slay, but that was bothering the local people at the time. That is a creature of earth. And in this story, we find the overcoming the monster, right, of us as civilized humans. When we're building our cities and we're making our fields and farms, we've tended to push the wild to the periphery, to further and further and further. And then, of course, here at Friends of the Owyhee, that's a concept that we are all too familiar with as folks that are doing you know, everything that we can to campaign for the protection of these few wild areas that remain as we've become a global population. There's humans and agriculture and buildings and roads in all corners of the earth. So here, you know, at Friends of the Owyhee and widely in the conservation movement, the mother of all beasts, be those things that are potentially dangerous to us. Like when I'm out hiking and I think about a mountain lion potentially stalking me, that is still one of Gaia's creatures. So Orion, however, was not necessarily the most respectful, conservation-minded hunter. You know, we don't have anything that says that he was over hunting. But what we learn from Orion, or from the stories that are written about Orion, is that he was kind of a boastful hunter. He was a great hunter. And from the point of view down here on Earth, looking up at him, the great hunter of the sky. And if that's all you know about his story, then you might get the wrong idea that the Greeks were putting this great hunter in the sky to say, go hunt everything, humans, go hunt, without thinking about the consequences. But no, that's not the story at all. So Orion had fallen in love with the goddess Artemis. Okay, Artemis is the goddess of the hunt. So you can kind of see why she was interested in old Orion. Goddess of the moon, goddess of archery. So she's an incredible archer. you know, and Orion probably was too, being a good equal hunter. So Artemis found a worldly mortal partner that was equal in all of these things that she was interested in. And so Artemis and Orion, being a couple, was taking a lot of Artemis's time away from the Greek pantheon. I mean, she's a goddess, for goodness sake, right? She's a daughter of Zeus, the greatest Greek god, and also sister to Apollo. And Apollo, like the sun, Apollo is the god of the sun, the charioteer of the sun. He doesn't actually drive the chariot across. That's Helios's job. But he doesn't actually drive the chariot, but he does own that chariot of the sun. And Apollo's also god of music and god of the arts. But Apollo is apparently a little bit jealous. He didn't really like the idea of his sister getting entangled with a mortal. So what does any brother do but go be a big old tattletale? So he, Apollo tattletales to Gaia. Gaia, unknowing that there's this great hunter out there that's sort of being a little too good at hunting, a little boastful, saying that he could hunt anything. He could hunt any of the great beasts. Nothing was a match for his hunting skill. So Apollo told this to Gaia. Gaia's like, I think I can give you a beast that is worth your challenge. So Gaia resurrects the Hydra, but not in Hydra form. Remember that head that Hercules stuck in the sand and it metamorphosed into a scorpion? Well, now we have the rise of Scorpius, this gigantic building-sized scorpion that comes barreling across after Orion. Okay, and Apollo is like, right? Jaw drops and is like, oh, what did I just do? My sister's going to be so mad at me. Okay, so he knows that the scorpion is just barreling towards Orion. And so Orion, you know, takes off after this scorpion is after him and thinks like, hey, maybe I can swim across the ocean because scorpions can't swim, right? So maybe I can swim to that island out there and be safe away from the scorpion. Well, Apollo caught up with Artemis and having a nice chat with Artemis, like, oh, how's your boyfriend? Oh, you're a pretty good archer, right? Oh, I bet you can't hit that shiny spot out there in the ocean. And that shiny spot was a reflection off of Orion's shield. So Artemis, not knowing this, but Apollo, knowing this full well, lets an arrow fly out there and, of course, hits her mark right on, no problem, but kills her love. And learning this, Artemis is distraught and destroyed, quite pissed off at her brother, but the deed is done. So Artemis went to Gaia. She went to the rest of the pantheon and asked if Orion could be honored by the people of Earth as a mortal by being put up into the night sky, for all the people of Earth to remember that you shouldn't be so boastful in all realms of life, but also so boastful in hunting, that hunting for the thrill and for the sport and for the pure, I guess, egotism and machismo that one could overcome the great nature is not the way to go about hunting. And so that's the story that we have of Orion. Is not that Orion is just some bloodthirsty, elephant-killing hunter of the night sky, but that we're supposed to learn from Orion that that's not the way to go about hunting. We should always honor the hunt. Okay, so here we have a picture of Apollo, a picture of Artemis, picture of Orion and Artemis together, totally off of the internet. I just thought this was a cute one, you know. And now a look at the night sky. You'll notice that as Orion is coming up over the eastern horizon, as Orion is right about now, on the western horizon, going down about at the same time. And this is incredible. It's like about 40 minutes before you can make out the constellations, but about 40 minutes apart, the constellation Scorpius goes down as Orion comes up. And so there's this annual or even nightly dance between the two, that the two are on opposite sides of the night sky in this continual chase as the Scorpion is chasing Orion around the night sky. Okay. Now, I should remind you that that Scorpion was the head of the Hydra, right? And isn't that Scorpion also after Hercules? And you're totally right. So therefore, Chiron, being the centaur, he sent another centaur up into the sky to keep tabs on that Scorpion and say, don't you get out of line, Scorpion. You chase Orion. Don't go chasing Hercules. So that's what Sagittarius is doing there in the sky. Sagittarius, the centaur, is literally there to protect Hercules from, you know, his ultimate monster, the Hydra. Okay. So I think that's a pretty neat way to stitch together multiple parts of the annual story of the movement of these constellations. Okay, the other story that I wanted to remind you of that I find really charismatic, especially this time of year during the fall, that if you carefully look at the constellations throughout the year, and also the sun, which we can't really help to look at. It's very bright. Don't look directly at it. It'll hurt your eyes. But annually throughout the sun, we have the sun high in the sky during the summer, low in the sky during the winter, and then kind of halfway in between during the equinoxes. Now, the way that that slowly changes was obviously acknowledged by early people. And people in a variety of cultures, or in one Mesopotamian culture, began to make a story about this. Began to make a myth and a legend about the death and rebirth of the sun, or the annual movement of our life-giving sun, the one true light. So different from the Greeks that had a pantheon of lots of different gods and goddesses. These folks only believed in one god, which essentially was a representation of the sun, right? The most important life-giving feature there for their crop growth in the Fertile Crescent. So here I have a couple of cutouts from Stellarium that shows way back in July or in June, and then to August, and then September, to show that the sun does actually change positions throughout the sky. Same time of day, just a little bit higher in the sky during those respective, or a little bit lower in the sky in those respective months. So what we see, if you look at this throughout the year and match that up with the constellations, is that during this time of year, the Virgo constellation is the first thing, or sorry, is the last constellation to come up over the eastern horizon before the sun comes up. And then boom, smack dab right there after Virgo comes up, out comes the sun, right? There we have the birth of the sun from, you know, the Virgo constellation. And then a little bit later, about this time, the constellation Scorpio, that famed Scorpio chasing Orion down, barely touches the sun with the end of its pincers. And the scorpion, when you get kissed by a scorpion or stung by a scorpion, it leaves a couple little dots. I've never done this, but this is what I've read. And so they refer to that as the kiss of the scorpion. So the sun was kissed by the scorpion and then falls out of the sky. He dies. The sun seems to stand still during the winter solstice for about 3 days before being resurrected and rebirthed back into the sky when we have the Christmas celebration, right? The celebration of life where the sun has returned back in all of its glory, 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 hallelujah. So this story obviously sounds familiar to our Christmas story, just in recognizing that this is literally a story that is written in the stars and has been with humanity for thousands of years as we've been acknowledging these things. Okay. Oh, there's a little bit more to the story, right? The three bright stars, like the three wise men, and so on and so forth, okay? Now, there's one more story that I wanted to introduce tonight. And this is a story that doesn't exist yet. Ooh, weird, right? So once upon a time, I had talked to someone that referred to themselves as a mathematician. I thought that was so cool. That today, this is a sociologist, and today that there is all around us myths and legends that are currently forming right now in the way that we tell stories to one another, be they totally discrete, true things about the color of that thing being red and it moved really fast. Those are stories of instances that occur. But you know, mythology takes instances and it embellishes them a little bit more. And that's how we get myths. That's how oral traditions have been passed through generations for thousands of years. And then I encourage you to become a mathematician. All right. So here's the example. Here's a little kernel to go off of. We have the winter circle, right? Big winter circle. But we could also maybe think of that as the big loop. If you've ever heard of the Big Loop Rodeo that takes place in May in Jordan Valley, the Big Loop, like a big lasso of a cowboy. Okay, you know, maybe this is a little stretch for some of you, but I think this is going to be a Malheur County hit. I look forward to us. If you'd like to email me, get a hold of me, get a hold of Catalin, you know, let's talk more about this. Back burner, think about it for a little while. I'd like to talk to the folks down in Jordan Valley at the Big Loop Rodeo about the big cowboy in the sky. There's Orion with the big old loop going around him. And there's his horse down there, Sirius, kind of like this fella standing on his horse doing the loop trick. And then, of course, up there at Aldebaran, the eye of the bull, who do we have but a roping steer that's over there going to get roped by the big loop? Okay, so it's not a fully formed story. That's what we are here together for. Hopefully we can sit around a campfire sometime in the spring and talk about creating this myth together. All right. So that's what I had for tonight. This is the very last stargazing presentation in our series with Friends of the Owyhee. And it's been just wonderful to go about these 14 or so stargazing presentations. Now, do watch for an upcoming winter solstice star party. We're trying to, it's a little late to arrange a couple of these, but we're going to do it. Winter solstice is a time period that's very dark. The sun is low, but also the globe at night folks are looking for us to collect globe at night data. So we're going to do that together somewhere here in Ontario, probably at the Four Rivers Cultural Center. Okay, so for next month, I encourage you to come to Renee's presentation from the Oregon Natural Desert Association. She'll be talking about the Oregon Desert Trail and all of the exciting adventures that she and others have had on that trail. So hope to see y'all again here next month at our Friends of the Owyhee webinar. And with that, I'll stop sharing my screen and ask for any questions relating to that stargazing presentation. Okay.
This is Richard.
Hey there. Yes, Richard.
You spoke of using apps when we're out in the hinterland. Will these apps work using our phones if we do not have Wi-Fi or connectivity for our phone?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the apps that I highly recommend is Stellarium. And it caches all of its data. So yes, it will work even if you don't have satellite connection. Now, the feature that that won't work, and you may have seen this before, is there's a feature you can turn on to have real motion. So if you're in satellite connection, what you see through your phone is the night sky on the other side, and you can kind of move it around and do that. That function won't work if you're not within connection. But who needs that feature anyway, right? Really what you need is some sort of map of the stars to help you find your way around. Okay, and the more familiar you get with some of the things like Orion's Belt and the position of Polaris, then you can start building around those. Now that feature is pretty handy, but it's not what you need. So yeah, that'll work. And then also the loss of night app, if you're collecting dark sky data, that'll cache the data in the app until you get back to service. And you have to open the app when you're back in service, and it'll download or it'll upload all of that to their server. So yeah, that was a very good question, Rich. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, awesome, Casey. Love today's presentation. I love the stories. Thank you. Yes, you're very welcome. Always wonderful to see you here. We'll be kind of sad to not see you in future stargazing presentations, but someday I can feel it. We'll be out there stargazing under the night sky. I hope you liked my reference to Jondalar and Ayla too. All right, any other questions out there? Lee, Michael, Jay?
This is Dolores. I think I have an app called Stargazer on my iPad. And I know that it will tell you what stars are where, and you can set the time for when different stars are in the sky, even if it's not at that particular time of day. So have you used that one at all?
I have not used Stargazer. I know there's a half a dozen that are similar. So no, I haven't used that, but it sounds a lot like Stellarium.
Okay.
And I would definitely recommend Stellarium. It's a free and open source software that you can get on your desktop, also with your iPad and phone. And I like Stellarium because they've been doing this for like 30 years. They had some of the, I mean, I used to get a mail disc to me to put that on the computer. You remember those days? So they've been doing this for long enough, and they are embedded in the kind of the stargazing and astronomer community, that they have something for everybody. Between the sort of more basic, you know, I want to move around the sky, but if you really want to get some of the major technical pieces, you know, SSO objects and Messier objects and all these things, they have all of that too. So Stellarium for the phone, there's a free version. There's also a paid version. I don't remember how much it is, but it's well worth it. I'm sure Stargazer is good too.
How do you spell Stellarium?
Let me put it in the chat here.
Actually, if you could put links in the YouTube thing, that would be
helpful.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, I think we can probably do that, to put a link to Stellarium, to download Stellarium software in the comments or in the text on YouTube. Yeah.
I'll also send out that link in the follow-up email.
Right on. Thank you, Catalin. All right, good deal. Any other questions out there?
Walk. It wasn't Stellarium. I mean, it wasn't Stargazer. It was Star Walk. W-A-L-K.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't used that one either. I mean, really, once I realized Stellarium had a phone app when I got a phone, I went right for that. So. Yeah, well, very good. I hope that you found tonight's information informative and fun. As I said, these were some of the leftovers that I hadn't really talked about in the past in stargazing. But also go back to the archived YouTube videos. You can usually fast forward through the first 15, 20 minutes of the preliminary material to get to the meat of the presentation. But going back to those and practicing, you'll be a very efficient stargazer before you know it. You'll know the names of these stars, positions of constellations with just a little practice.
And this is Dolores again. We live in Seattle, so the stars that we gaze at are not particularly plentiful because of light pollution.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, luckily, y'all make plenty of adventures out here to the Owyhee.
This is true, and it's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.